Oh hey, and welcome to another episode of The Blue Wizard Cooks. I'm Joe, the Blue Wizard. So the other day, a friend of mine participated in one of those Facebook trends that are going around where you list 10 things that you don't like that other people seem to like a lot. And one of the things that she mentioned that she doesn't like but that other people really like a lot, or seem to, is hummus. And I got to thinking to myself, you know, that's kind of true. Though I do like hummus, I like the flavor of a lot of hummuses that are out there, I have to say there's something about the texture that's just a little too, chickpea-y. You guys know chickpeas, right? The beans that you eat that, you know, they sort of seem to disintegrate and turn to sand in your mouth. Not really a pleasant texture. And yet that is the basis of hummus. So I thought to myself, have you ever had a hummus that didn't have that sandy texture to it? And as it turns out, I have. One time, I tried a recipe for hummus that was avocado hummus. And as it turned out, this avocado hummus, or what I like to call Hummole, has the health benefits of hummus, but it has all the flavor and texture of a guacamole because of the avocados. So I worked on perfecting the recipe, and that's what I'm gonna share with you all today. My recipe for Hummole. Again, it has all of the health benefits and wonderful things about hummus, but then it also has all of the deliciousness and creamy texture that is guacamole. So without further ado, let's make some magic. Okie dokie, now that we're here, we need to get set up for the recipe. It's time that we get all of our ingredients together in one place. This way we have everything we need, where we need it, when we need it, which makes the recipe go 10 times faster than it would if we had to grab things out of the refrigerator or out of the pantry as we were going. So let's get cracking. Okay, so that's everything in its place. We're going to be making this Hummole, our little hummus guacamole crossover, in two phases. We're going to be first putting together a lot of the ingredients that normally go into hummus, and then we're going to start adding the ingredients that normally go into guacamole to give us that nice creamy guacamole flavor and texture that we normally get. So in order to do that, again, we're going to start putting the hummus part together first. Now, one of the key ingredients that's in every hummus is chickpeas. So I have one 15-ounce can of chickpeas, which I have taken and drained, and I have rinsed it off in the sink and then just sort of strained off any of the excess liquid. So I'm gonna add that into the food processor. Now I'm using a food processor here, but you don't have to use a food processor. You could use a potato masher. Now, that being said, because I'm using a food processor, I'm really not gonna be chopping up my ingredients super much because the food processor is gonna do that for me. So if you were gonna use a potato masher or some other way to crush up your chickpeas and your avocados, then I would make sure that any of the chopping that I'm doing, that you do it a lot more fine. Now, the other thing that goes in that makes it hummus is going to be this stuff. This is called tahini paste. It's a sesame seed paste, and this is in every recipe of hummus that I've ever seen. So we're going to be adding it here, just like we would add it in a regular hummus recipe. I'm only going to be adding about 2 tablespoons of this tahini paste into the mixture. Some other hummuses might have a little bit more tahini paste inside of them. I'm only adding 2 tablespoons because I don't want the flavor of the sesame seed paste to overpower some of the other flavors that we have going into the guacamole. All right, the next ingredient that we need to add is olive oil. I'm gonna be adding 1/3 cup of olive oil into the mix. This is another classic ingredient that goes into hummus a lot, is olive oil. And then another ingredient that goes into hummus is garlic. So I'm going to put in 2 cloves of garlic. Now again, I'm using a food processor, so I don't really have to break this down too much because the food processor will do it for me. All I'm gonna do is take the garlic and I'm going to give it a quick smash, okay? And then throw that into the food processor. It's kind of the best part of making recipes like this, is taking the garlic and smashing it up with my knife. Gets out a lot of anger and aggression. So that's all the ingredients that would normally go into hummus from this recipe. We are gonna add one ingredient that goes into guacamole normally from the start, and that is going to be a jalapeno, okay? So normally you wouldn't find jalapeno in a hummus unless you were making a jalapeno hummus, which I mean, I've never had before, but I'm sure it's delicious. And we're going to take and have the jalapeno, and we're going to take out all of the seeds and the ribs of the jalapeno as well, because that's where a lot of the heat is. If you like things super spicy, then leave them in. But if you are like me and you like things to have a little bit of a kick, but you don't want it to like blast you away, then you're going to want to take out the seeds and the ribs of the jalapeno. Normally I do that with a spoon. Okay, so I just take the spoon and I scrape out any of the seeds that you see, as well as taking out a lot of the ribs, okay, and get all of those out. So I'm gonna do that to both halves. So after I've de-seeded my jalapeno, I'm just gonna give that, a rough chop, just sort of cut each half into 3 pieces, because again, the food processor is gonna do all of that work for me, and then throw it in. Now that we have all of this stuff into the food processor, I'm actually gonna start breaking things down now. The reason for this is that the ingredients that we've just added are a little bit more hearty than some of the other ingredients that we're gonna be adding a little later. So we wanna give them a little bit of a head start over some of the other ingredients. All right, so I took and give that a few pulses and then let it go for a couple of seconds until we get a nice paste, okay, out of that. And you can see the consistency that we have inside of the food processor right now. It's very pasty, very paste-like, but still not quite smooth. That's okay, because we're gonna be adding in a bunch of other ingredients that are gonna help make it smooth like that. The next ingredient that we wanna add are our avocados. So I'm gonna take 3 medium avocados, and I'm gonna add those into the food processor. If you've never taken and taken the seed out and peeled an avocado before, let me show you how to do it. This is the way that I do it because I find it's the easiest. All right, so I'm gonna take the avocado and I'm going to run my knife around the outer edge, trying to get the avocado to get cut in half. Now there's a big seed inside of an avocado, and so you can't just go straight through. You have to sort of rotate it around. And then after I do that, I give it a twist, and then 1/2 of the avocado comes out without a seed inside of it, and then 1/2 comes with the seed. To take the seed out, I find the easiest way to do it is to take my knife and give it a swift plunk, twist, and then out comes the seed. Now, if you are a person who is a little bit clumsy or you don't have necessarily great hand-eye coordination, I probably wouldn't use this method of getting the avocado seed out, because obviously I'm holding the avocado in my hand and then throwing a knife at it. All right, so if you are at all nervous about that, I would just not do it that way. Just make it a little bit more messy, take a spoon or your fingers and just plunk out the seed, okay? Don't risk your hand, all right, just for convenience. So I'm gonna take now and start adding the avocados into our food processor. All I'm doing is taking a spoon and just sort of scraping out the flesh of the avocado into the food processor. It comes out very easily. And I'm gonna do that to all 3 of my medium avocados. So the next guacamole ingredient that we're going to be adding into our Hummole is going to be lime juice. Lime juice is a classic flavor inside of guacamole, not only because it tastes good, but also it keeps the avocados from turning brown really, really quick. So I'm just gonna take 3 limes, yes, 3 whole limes, and I'm going to take and juice that into my food processor here. If you find that your limes are like super duper juicy and you don't like a lot of lime juice, then just add 2 or add as much as you want. That's one of the nice things about making the recipe for yourself, is that you can control exactly how much flavor it is that you're adding into the recipe. So that's all the bulky stuff done. Now we just need to add in our spices and flavors. So we're gonna add a variety of different spices and seasonings into our Hummole today. Most of them are to give us that nice, flavor that we normally get from guacamole. So first thing I'm going to add is something that we add to all recipes, is of course salt. Even baking recipes get salt, because salt really just helps to bring out the flavor of any recipe that you're doing. So I'm gonna add a teaspoon of salt. I'm also going to add in a 1/2 teaspoon of freshly cracked black pepper. I always crack my black pepper in a mortar and pestle. You might just use regular black pepper at home from the can, or you can use one of those pepper grinders to get it in. But I like the mortar and pestle because I think it's fun. I'm also going to add in a half a teaspoon of this spice right here. It's called Sumac, okay? And Sumac is sort of a fancy spice. It has sort of a lemony flavor to it. If you don't want to bother going to the grocery store in order to find Sumac, even though a lot of times it's pretty easily to find in the international foods aisle, it has a very lemony flavor, so you could just substitute a half a teaspoon of lemon zest for this instead. But if you can find the spice, I really encourage you to use that. I'm also going to be adding in a little bit of onion powder, 1 whole teaspoon of onion powder, and a 1/4 teaspoon of cumin. This cumin spice is what gives a lot of Tex-Mex recipes and South American recipes sort of like that funkiness to it that is really, really delicious on the tongue, and it makes it feel very warm. So that's all of our spices, all of our flavors. Now we're gonna give it a final blend until we get a nice smooth consistency. I'm going to set this on to pulse for a couple of times just to get the avocados mixed in, and then set it to high for a good 30 seconds just to make sure that everything gets whipped together pretty nice. All right, so now that that's processed and it's nice and smooth, it has a nice, wonderful, smooth consistency to it, I do want to give it a final taste for seasonings just to make sure that everything is well balanced. That is fantastic. But now that I'm tasting it again, I did hold back a little bit of the lime juice from the full 3 limes. I think I'm gonna add the last of that lime juice. I think that it really needs it because I love the flavor of lime. Yum. All right, and then give it a final spin. All right, another taste for seasoning, using the back of the spoon this time so I'm not double dipping. Oh, that's the stuff. That's the stuff. All right, so I'm gonna clear all the rest of this stuff away so that I can get our Hummole into a nice clean bowl. I bet you wish that cleanup was that easy for you. Listen, just because I tell you guys that you don't need to be a wizard in order to make good food in the kitchen doesn't mean that there are some perks. All right. So just to be safe, I'm going to take our blade out, and then I'm going to take and scoop it into our bowl. Yum-y. Take and smooth it around a little bit. Yum. All right, and just to add one final flourish, just to add a little bit of color and a little bit of kick to our Hummole, I'm going to add some crushed red pepper flakes on the top. This is traditional in guacamole and in hummus. In hummus, a lot of times you'll see it decorated with some crushed red pepper flake. There, doesn't that look fantastic and delicious? It's time that we take a taste. Tortilla chips, just like you would have with guacamole. Now, another thing that I like to do with this hummus is I like to take it, put it, and sort of like spread it on top of a piece of pita bread. It is fantastic. This stuff is out of this world. It has all of the flavor of guacamole. You can taste the avocados, and you can taste the lime and the salt and all those spices that we put in. And even though it has all the health benefits of a traditional hummus, because it's got all of the chickpeas and tahini and everything like that, all those good fats that are inside of there, it doesn't have any of that awkward texture that you normally get from chickpeas because the avocado gives it such a nice, wonderful creaminess to it. Fantastic. I love this stuff. Remember guys, that if you like this recipe and you want to make it, the ingredients and all of their measurements as well as the method are always listed in the description box below the video. Remember that if you did like this recipe and you want to see more like it, you can tell me by making sure to hit that like button down below the video. Also, if you want to see more recipes like this and any other recipes that I do, both on this show, The Blue Wizard Cooks, as well as my other show, The Blue Wizard Bakes, you should make sure to go and hit the subscribe button as well as the little bell for notifications. This way, you'll get notified every time that I post a new video. If you make this recipe or any other recipe, or if you have any ideas for future shows, you can make sure to follow me on any of my social medias. I'm on both Instagram and Twitter at the handle Joe the Blue Whiz. You can also leave me a comment down below the video. I love seeing whenever you guys share pictures with me of the stuff that you're making, especially if it's any of the recipes that I've shared with you here on my channel. Well, my friends, I'm afraid that that's all that we have time for here today on the Blue Wizard Cooks. Remember, you don't have to be a professional chef or even a wizard in order to make magic in your kitchen. Bye. Yo, Chip Bowl! Well, I thought it was understood that I also wanted the chips. Bowls these days.